I created a knitting bingo at the start of this year that I forgot to show you, and I've kept up with updating it every month, but I kept forgetting to talk about it until about mid-spring, which felt like a weird time to tell you about it. So I decided to wait until mid-year to show it to you. So here's my 2025 knitting bingo card. I was going to make a post that was like, that wasn't on my bingo card, but that meme is dead now, and also it never really made sense in that context because it was on my bingo card because I made the bingo card and I have complete autonomy over what I make. So now that we're halfway into 2025, here's what I've completed so far. I do want to say that I have not been actively trying to achieve the things on this bingo card. I had a couple projects in mind when I created it, but nothing was planned out, nothing set in stone, and I haven't been using this card as like a roadmap, but I had the thought, what if I did? If halfway through the year I decided to plan some projects to cross off a few more of these squares, what would I make? Now, I'm not necessarily trying to get bingo. I just looked at what I had left and chose what sounded interesting to me. In fact, would I even get bingo if I made these projects? Oh, I see one that I could get, but I would have to use the free middle square. Anyway, I planned some projects, including some mock-ups of what I would make. And this isn't an actual planning video, meaning I might not make everything that I talk about in this video, but if I were to make them all, here are my thoughts on the patterns and what yarn I would choose, etc. So the first square is a sideways project, and I just chose this because I thought it sounded interesting. I don't think I've ever knit a sideways project before, and the pattern that I've chosen for this is a cardigan. It's the Midland cardigan by Laura Penrose, and she actually released this after I created my bingo, even though she released it at the beginning of this year. So I did not have this in mind, but as soon as she released it, I was like, that is perfect for my knitting bingo. So the construction of this pattern is that you start at one side of the body, you knit that sideways, and then you pick up the sleeves and you work those in the round. And I like that she included a fake seam because garter stitch does tend to stretch. So there's a seam that runs the length of the shoulders and the sleeves just to give some stability to the sleeves. It says it's designed to have an oversized tapered fit, and there's a note that says to choose your size based on your lower waist measurement because that's the most fitted part of the cardigan. So that's kind of interesting. If I were to make this, I would definitely spend a bit more time thinking about the size that I would want to make. Right off the top of my head, I would probably make the third size, the 48.5 inch, but that's the bust size. So I would want to remeasure my lower waist and see what makes the most sense there. So this pattern calls for a DK weight yarn. And as I was choosing yarn for this, I came across a yarn, well, two yarns that I've never used. The first one is from BC Garn. It is their Semilla Melange. And I found two colorways that I really liked. The first is Rust, and I just think this is a nice orange melon color. I actually just bought a sweater from Patagonia that's like this exact color, and I really feel like this is one of my go-to colors. I just really love orange, but this is a little bit more muted. I also really like their pink colorway. It's sort of in the middle of like fuchsia and magenta. Like it's not super bright, but it is very eye-catching, and I really love this pink color. But as I was looking into this yarn, I was looking at the yardage per grams and noticed that it is actually much closer to a fingering weight than it is a DK, even though it's listed as a DK. And the pattern actually says when you're choosing your yarn to really make sure that you choose something that's similar to either of the two yarns that are used in the samples. It says the yarns used are very light and bloom when washed, so try to use a yarn that has a similar fiber content and the same or similar meterage per 100 grams. And as I started to compare these, I noticed that the two yarns that she uses are between 240 and 250 meters per 100 grams, which I think is a pretty standard DK weight. but the BC Garn Semilla Melange has 350 meters per 100 grams. So it really is much closer to a fingering weight. So even though I love these colors and I was stoked about this idea, I decided to mock up a different yarn. And I found another yarn that's new to me. It's the Fibre Co. Lore, and this is the colorway Gentle. And this is a true DK weight. It is 250 meters per 100 grams. And I really liked this colorway. This is not something that I normally gravitate to, but I just thought it looked really nice. And I like how there is subtle variation within the skein. That's not gonna come across in my mock-up, but you can see it in this skein. I think this would make a really pretty cardigan. So I don't know if I'll actually cast this on this year, but I just think this project would be really fun to make. And it also produces just a classic cardigan that I feel like I would get a lot of wear out of. Okay, next square is crochet a garment. I have wanted to crochet another garment ever since I made the Ariana cardigan. I do want to make another granny square garment, but I also want to branch out and just try a different crochet stitch. And as I was looking at Ravelry for crochet sweater patterns, there aren't a ton of like unique sweaters. There's a lot of like mesh sweaters and a lot of like double crochet stitch sweaters, of course granny square garments. But I feel like crochet is a little bit harder because even though there are like more stitch types than in knitting, you are kind of limited in what you're able to do with them as far as like how that translates to a garment. At least that's like my take on why there aren't more crochet garments out there, but I would love to see more crochet patterns get popular. And one very popular crochet designer is Nomad Stitches. And I came across the Amiata or Amiata pullover, and I love this sweater. I think this is so cute. I love the stitch pattern. It's just something more interesting than double crochet. It doesn't look too bulky to me, and it's also crocheted in a fingering weight yarn, which I think will help with the lightness of the garment. And I love all the details in this pattern. That curved hem is like reason enough to make this, and I like the ribbing details. And also she just looks so cute in this sweater. Like, I want to look like that. So the photography is definitely helping here, but I really want to make this. And I mocked this up in a few different colorways. The first is actually that BC Garn Semilla Melange yarn, because since it is much closer to a fingering weight, I figured maybe I could just use that yarn. And I just really love this pink color. That's the colorway. It's called pink. And I think this sweater looks really good in this pink. Also, both of the yarns that I'm talking about for this sweater are a woolen spun yarn, which I also think is important for keeping it a little bit on the lighter side. The other woolen spun yarn that I would love to try, I'm not sure why I haven't tried it yet, is the Harrisville Designs Shetland. This is in the color Chicory, and this yarn comes in so many great colors. Like I said, I haven't knit with this yarn, but I have gone to the product pages for this yarn just to get inspired by colors. I think I probably couldn't choose a bad color from them, but I just really like this periwinkle blue. I have a hoodie in this color that I wear all the time, and I think this is so pretty. This might be my top pick for what color I would go with. But another one that I mocked up is also the Shetland yarn, and it's in the colorway Lime, and I just love this color. In fact, I already have a sweater quantity in a very similar color right up there, so maybe I wouldn't choose it just because I want to keep some variety in what I make, but I do think this is a really, really nice color, and it's definitely one of my favorites. Next on my bingo card is an all black project. I love knitting with black yarn. I haven't actually made too many projects because I also love color, but I am just drawn to black and I wear it a lot, and it just makes sense for me to knit some black projects every now and then. So the pattern that I've chosen for this is the Rib Lace Raglan by James & Watts. This pattern has been on my mind for a while, and I really like the short sleeve version. I've seen people style this in so many different ways, and I think my favorite is just to wear a cute bralette under. The information on Ravelry doesn't give you a suggested ease. That might be in the pattern, I'm not sure, I haven't bought it yet, but I really like this sweater in quite an oversized fit, which is different than what the pattern photos show. But I've seen a few people make it quite oversized, and I think it's just really cute. So I would contemplate anywhere from like a 46 to a 54 inch, and my bust is like maybe about 36 to 37 at its fullest. So I'm thinking like minimum 10 inches of positive ease if I were to make this. And I found a yarn that I have not tried, but I really want to. And here's my mock-up of roughly what I think this would look like in this yarn. I think it would look really cool. This is from Juniper Moon Farm. It's their Summer Solstice yarn. And this is the colorway Midnight Sun, which I think is a gorgeous color. And this yarn is a combination of 48% linen, 24% cotton, 24% viscose, and 4% polyester. It's a sport weight, which I think this pattern does call for a fingering weight, but one of the samples was knit out of a sport weight, so I'm sure that wouldn't be difficult to adapt. And I love that this is a summer yarn, but it has the tweed. I think that's so cool. I really want to try this. My next bingo square is Colorwork Socks. I have signed up for Summer Lee's Colorwork Cuff Club, and it's been really fun to see each new colorwork pattern release every month, but I've actually only made one, which I need to get on it because that's a really expensive pattern if I only knit one of them. But I do have another one that I would really like to make. It is the August pattern. It's this really pretty floral print. And when I knit socks, I really like to use stash yarn because they're the perfect project to use up a single skein or to use up leftovers, especially with the color work. And what I was thinking for my first pair, I have two mock-ups. So the first one, I have this Cascade Heritage highlighter yellow yarn that is left over from a Musselburgh hat that I made. And I think this pairs with a lot of colors really well, but I really like it with this like coral peach color. This one is also Cascade Heritage. It's in the color Living Coral. And I could see myself buying a skein to go with a skein or leftovers that I already have. But of course mine wouldn't look tweedy like the sock that I mocked up does. Also, I didn't do a very good job mocking this one up. The color work was a little bit challenging, so you'll have to kind of use your imagination. Another color combo that I really like is like a light baby blue with a deep mossy green. And so I mocked this one up. This is using the Lang Jawoll Something Blue for the main color and Cascade Heritage Mossy Rock for the green. I just think this color combo is so pretty. I would love to make some socks like this. I most likely have something like that green that I could use, but I definitely don't have sock yarn in this light blue color, so I would have to buy that. But that might be worth it because I think that's just such a nice color combo. The last bingo square that I could potentially cross off this year is project with a new technique. And by that, I mean a new to me technique. I feel like I could go a lot of different directions with this, and I looked at quite a few patterns that I could have chosen, but I recently watched Kendra's video on her summer knitting, and she finished the Tonight top by Lily Kate Makes. I think this top looks so nice, and she also talked about how the pattern is really well written and well thought out, and I love all the details in this top. Last time I made a Lily Kate Makes pattern, I had a great time. She just writes really good patterns, and I've been wanting to make another one of hers. The reason that I chose this pattern for a new technique is that it has double knit armhole edges, and I've actually never done that before, but I've always wanted to try it. I just think they look so nice, and that was like the perfect edging to put on this top. So I mocked up a few different ideas here, and the first one is kind of boring, but if I'm being honest, it might be the one that I would actually go with. I've really been wanting to try the Knitting for Olive cotton merino. I think because of the turtleneck, this might be a good garment to try a merino and cotton blend. And the color range in this yarn is actually kind of limited. I was a little bit surprised, but I do really like this top in a dark yarn. Lily Kate has a sample in black that I think looks really nice. There's actually not a black in the cotton merino yarn, but I really like the navy. It's just a classic navy. There's really nothing else to it, but I just think it looks very classic and sophisticated. I could also go a different direction and knit this in a light color. This is Jawoll again in the color Wisteria, and I think my mock-up didn't quite turn out great with this color, but I think you can get an idea, and I really like this color. And lastly, I mocked this up in a Noro. This is the Noro Sonata yarn, which is a cotton, silk, viscose, and nylon blend. I've never worked with Noro before, but I've heard good things about this yarn as a summer yarn, and I love this color Magenta. I think this just makes a really pretty top, and this would maybe be my second in line if I were to make this. One thing about Noro is that it is on the more expensive side, but with something like this that doesn't have sleeves, you wouldn't need much of it, so it actually wouldn't be too expensive. And I love the variation in the skein. I think the mock-up worked well to show that off. So that's what I would knit. I am so glad that I finally shared my knitting bingo with you, because I've just been updating it every month and keeping it to myself. But I want to know, what is a square that you would put on your knitting bingo? Maybe you want to create one for the second half of 2025, or maybe you want to think about something that you might create for next year. But I would love to know your ideas, because it took me a while to come up with all of these, and I would love to do this again for next year, but I don't know if I can come up with all of the squares, especially because I tried to keep them a little more open-ended rather than referencing like specific patterns that I would want to make. So that's it for me, and I'll see you soon. Bye.